This is Body, Brain, and Pain. I'm Erin Babineau.
And I'm Michelle Steggy.
We are two doctors of physical therapy and orthopedic specialists here to have an approachable and courageous conversation about pain and our bodies that will be forever changing and aging.
This podcast is for everyone, not just medical providers. The better you understand pain, the more control you gain. Welcome back, everyone. If you have been keeping up with our previous episodes, we've spent a lot of time talking about pain neuroscience and the fact that how we think about pain has a large impact on our experiences. All of that information is great, but today we want to actually go into how you can apply this information to change your nervous system and all the ways that we can stay curious as humans about our pain response and see changes over time. We want you guys to be the experts of your own bodies.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue. We've been talking a lot with our community right now about our podcast, which has created some really fun conversations. So thank you, community, for that. And
Yes.
One of the feedback we got that we're saying the word patience a lot, when really we do mean all people, so all humans. We just are giving examples of what we see in clinic often, but really this is for every person. All this knowledge and information applies to you all. So one thing I stress with a lot of this is that we're just trying to help everyone form new habits, to check in with their bodies on a day-to-day basis. And Michelle said this nicely in some previous episodes, but it does take work. But I always say to people, less is more, consistency is better, body awareness is better. So we're hoping today that we can kind of get into like some of the bread and butter basics of what this nudging and mastering your nervous system is all about. Exercise is a lot like daily medication. So
Yes,
it is. As physical therapists, we're often, I think, cheerleaders to stick with it, because sometimes this stuff takes some time to see some changes, and it's often why people give up on exercise a lot. So
it's like any other habit. It takes time for that consistency to stick.
Yeah.
And it's a process.
It's such a process, and we have to be gentle with ourselves during this time to start forming these new habits, and we can do it, and we do it. We see cool changes.
But once those habits are there, it's much easier to maintain, right? It's
so much easier.
Like any other habit.
Yes, absolutely. Fun facts of why this is so important. This can be your social distance party fact.
Yes.
But we have 45 miles of nerves in our body.
That's so many.
That's so many.
That's so many.
So you
so
could
far.
It's so far. You could get from Minneapolis to Hudson, Wisconsin, if you're local to Minneapolis area. A little further almost, actually. So that's pretty crazy. But it's just a reminder how powerful our nervous system and brain is. And so, again, you becoming the master of that and knowing more about it is really getting the locus of control back in your hands, which is great. Really
and
great.
I think that reinforces the fact, too, that that's why it's involved with anything, any part of your body, pain in any area.
Yeah.
Your nervous system is there. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And also important to know that 25% of us, if not more, have a sensitive nervous system.
Me included.
Me too. And so it's like a spectrum. I always compare it when I talk to people about the nervous system and this fact that some people have more sensitive nervous systems than other. I compare it to flexibility. Not all of us have the flexibility of a gymnast. And we see that same variability in people's nervous systems.
Yeah.
Some of us are more mobile. Some of us have more hypersensitive nervous systems.
Right.
It's just the variability of being human.
Absolutely. We see that, even with people, how people's joints move, same thing.
Yeah. Yep. And none of this is a conscious decision. Yeah. Yes, you can make changes in flexibility. You can make changes in sensitivity of your nervous system too.
Yeah.
But we're all individual.
And it's our beautiful bodies and physiology.
Yes,
45 miles. That
exactly.
means like if we took all the nerves out of your body and stretched it out. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot. So we've mentioned this before, but as a reminder, along this idea of a hypersensitive nervous system, our body's pain system is kind of like an alarm system. And so it's this output message from those 45 miles of our nervous system and our brain to protect us and help keep us alive. So pain is important in life, right?
Yeah.
We don't consciously decide to have that pain response heightened when we have had persistent pain. It's unfortunately sometimes just what happens. And I have the perfect example. I thought of this last week and I was like, oh, yes, this is perfect. So, talking about that alarm system. So, last weekend, my husband and I put a new motion sensor light in our backyard. So, we took an old one out, put a new one in, and it had some different things that you could change on it, one of which being the sensitivity for motion. And so I was like, oh, great, I'll just turn it all the way up. That was a mistake.
Yeah.
So I was already a little bit on edge because we did this electrical work by ourselves. And I was, just thinking about some possible things that could go wrong. So already a little heightened before I went to bed. But I think from 9 p.m. to like midnight, this motion sensor light went off, which meant that it lit up like daylight our bedroom window.
Yeah.
And it happened like 3 times. And every single time it happened, I jumped out of bed, looked out the window, and there was nothing out there.
Yeah.
And so by like the 3rd time, I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure that leaves are setting this light off. And so we decided to turn that off, and we had to turn the sensitivity down a little bit. So we were just catching a little bit too much motion, and this can happen in our bodies.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing. Our alarm system sensitivity gets a little bit too high, and we get on edge and frightened by things that normally wouldn't scare us.
Totally.
So
that's such an awesome example.
It was perfect. I know.
You're
I was
gonna have
like,
a brain,
I have to share
totally brain of PTs where we're always thinking of body analogies with weird household items.
Exactly. So that it's just another way for us to say our brain is important with pain, and it's something that is real, and it's something that is normal. But just like that light has a dial that you can change the sensitivity, it's not quite that easy in our body, but we can actually change the sensitivity of that alarm system in our body too. And that's what we're going to talk about.
True. Yeah. Through these new habits and knowing more about it.
Exactly. So, and with what we were just talking about, this alarm system, there's a fantastic graph in the article that is in the references. And I find this to be super, super helpful in describing this sensitivity of our alarm system. And so we kind of think of this like pain threshold where anything above that line, our brain interprets, and it's enough information that it actually does something about it.
Yeah.
And so with a heightened nervous system, we essentially start off closer to that pain threshold line. And so it takes less for us to cross that.
And
so,
sorry, Michelle. And through all our nudging, we're trying to make that stay away from that kind of threshold, like you said, or lower
exactly.
it.
We're just trying to change where we start from.
Yeah.
So there's more room for activity.
Yes.
So
I love that graph.
Check out the references. The graph is awesome. It's very user friendly. So check that out.
You said that so well, Michelle, and that graph is so great because it does really show, again, if we start a little more heightened with our nervous system closer to that pain threshold or that alarm response, it does take less and less activity to set that off. So through nudging and what we're going to talk about today, we actually start recalibrating that to decrease our baseline nervous system levels so that we gain more and more activity throughout our day. And that's our goal as physical therapists, is how do we start increasing activity levels, decreasing that pain, ultimately also just gaining function and getting you back to what you love to do. And we can do that through nudging. It's so, so powerful. In fact, our bodies will not let us ignore our alarm system. That's how we get that kind of heightened pain response, because our body keeps the score. There's a great book on that, and we'll add it to our references. Over time, literally, our body will not let us ignore our pain. So learning to check in with ourselves, nudging into pain so that we gain more function and more activities and things that we love to do is so, so powerful. So Michelle, now that we know all this, and let's bring in full circle our mantras. You know that you're nudging into that pain threshold and maybe that alarm. And this is where that mantra, your personal saying that gets you through that and helps us calm our response, which is really helpful to even change our pain response. We know that. So that positive self-talk, we apply that, but then now how do we nudge? Can you explain that?
Yep. So I think this is one of the best ways to actually make those changes in your nervous system to try to downregulate that pain response. And so we think of it kind of like Goldilocks. We want to find the amount of activity that is just right. So it's not the no pain, no gain situation. We want to teach people how to nudge into some symptoms to challenge and recalibrate their nervous system, but that doesn't mean that you're not paying attention to what you're feeling. And that doesn't mean no pain, no gain. And so this does take a little bit of trial and error. And when someone's nudging into an activity, that typically is going to increase their symptoms a little bit, but we don't want a really intense increase, just a small one. And so that's why we're talking about nudging.
Yeah.
And so that kind of is the best descriptor of what that should look like as far as how much you're experiencing symptoms with this activity.
Right.
And so you're looking at, did the symptoms linger after you did that activity?
Yeah.
If they did, how long did they linger? Was it like the entire day? That's too much. And so that's where we're talking about that little bit of trial and error too, is we kind of have to test it out to figure out how much is too much and how much is a good amount. And so that's the Goldilocks reference.
Yeah. And I often say, if you go up a point or two on that 10-point scale and it lasts or resets by, afternoon, evening time, that's usually a pretty decent, good trial of nudging.
Yeah.
Where you wake up the next day and things feel okay. Or maybe you're a little good sore. I always say we want smart sore, not silly sore. And we kind of expect it. Oftentimes we're trying to get our brains to figure out what is that smart sore that's we expect and is totally normal and is info for us. And what's that silly sore where we pushed it over the edge. Again, you're just using that Goldilocks amount and figuring out for your body what that means. And that might trend with different things happening in your day to day. So we talk a ton about that. If you have a busy day that was stressful and you slept like shit the night before, you might not have that awesome workout you were expecting or long hike you wanted to do, but that's okay. That's just you listening to your body.
Yep.
So,
and if you overdo it, if you maybe nudge into those symptoms a little bit too much, that's okay. Yeah. The pain is just information. It doesn't mean that you've damaged something. It doesn't mean that you've injured yourself more. It just means that you're, trying to find that Goldilocks amount and you just overdid it a little bit.
Exactly. I always say I don't even hate when that happens. This is a learning moment.
Yeah. Totally. Yep. Because it just gives you more information for the next time.
Exactly. So by graded movement, I love that. But let's give a example. Michelle, I know you have a good one that just happened the last few weeks.
Yeah. So the first visit with a recent client that I had, they weren't able to walk more than a few minutes without increased back pain. And so as you would expect with that, there's some fear associated with walking longer distances. There's those expectations of increased pain for situations where you'd have to walk more than a few minutes. And so first, we have to kind of get back to the basics of talking about how you're moving, getting muscles working that we want to be working when you're walking, and then working into the application. And so we found some different strategies that actually made a difference in how they felt while they were walking. And it was basically back to that body awareness, checking in with yourself when you're walking. What position are you in? Where are you holding tension?
Yeah.
Is there some different positions that we can modify a little bit to make an immediate change?
Right.
Awesome. That's great. So then we're talking about those pain boundaries. So having a min and a max or moderate pain being the limit when you're doing those activities.
Which is the nudge again, the nudging.
Exactly. Yep. So nudging into that pain, but being okay with a little bit of it being there.
Yep.
And so you're not ignoring it, but you're also not scared of the pain.
Right. Yeah.
And so maybe if you're thinking of like that 0 to 10 scale, maybe it's going up a point or two, but it's not significantly increasing, and those symptoms aren't lingering for an extended period of time afterwards.
Exactly.
It's seeming to settle back down in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for. And that's, I'm telling every one of the people that I see in the clinic about this, because this is how we make change.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's kind of what we do as physical therapists, but we, again, are doing this podcast because you can start doing this for yourselves, which is great.
For sure.
And over time, that's when our body starts viewing that activity as less and less threatening. So then you can increase the amount of what you're doing, and that's where having that plan. And typical physiological changes take us at least 6 to 8 weeks oftentimes. So it takes 2-3 months at least to start sometimes feeling changes for some people. But that's where, again, we're going to be your little cheerleader saying, stick with it, because we're actually changing how your neurons and pathways and brain is functioning, which is cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah. So body awareness, finding that sweet spot, and just being able to apply these things is where we become successful.
Pretty cool. And these are,
Cool.
Lifelong habits, information forever. So we're always working on health, just like you want to work on trying to eat as good as you can, or drink water, or get good sleep. But this is the same for how we move our bodies, and we hope to normalize that a little bit, especially right now. So we are recording this Sunday night. This is pre-election time. We have no idea what's going to be happening Tuesday, but we want to know that we're thinking of everyone and sending out love. And we also want to remind people that movement can be anything, especially right now. Exercise is not just like strength training. It's being playful and filling your joy cup up. So especially always, because I know it's been a really stressful year, but especially this week and next few months, sometimes the best things we can do in a flare, and even an emotional flare, not just physical flare. And we know that a lot of those share similar pathways. So talked about that last time. But when life gets tough, just fill that joy cup up and move in a way that brings you joy. This is important and is, so important always. So
absolutely. Yep. When times are stressful, we definitely have to find ways to fill up that joy cup. So whether that is a socially distanced walk with your friend outside, or getting a nice coffee, do something that makes you happy, move in a way that makes you happy. And like Erin said, we are going to get into that in our next episode. So we hope you guys have a wonderful week, and we will be back soon.
Take care, everyone.